When did my daughter start looking at him the way she used to look at me?
The thought slipped through Evelyn Carter's mind before she could stop it. She stood at the entrance of the rooftop healing garden, hand still resting on the cool metal handle of the glass door. The late afternoon light poured over everything in gold, over the rows of young shrubs, the wooden benches, the faint mist swirling around the sprinkler heads, and over them, Marcus Reed sat on the low stone edge of a planter, his blue maintenance jacket half unzipped, a white t-shirt visible beneath. He was laughing at something, that soft, surprised kind of laugh that seemed like it didn't get used often. On his left, his daughter Maya leaned into him, long braids tied back, sketchbook balanced on her knees. On his right, Chloe, Evelyn's 12-year-old, was practically glowing, one leg swinging, ponytail messier than Evelyn would have liked, face bright and open. "Look, Marcus," Chloe pointed at the page. "If we put more trees here, the bench will feel like a secret spot." Marcus smiled, eyes crinkling. "Yeah? A secret spot, huh? So your mom can't find you when she's done with her 100 meetings?" Chloe giggled. "Exactly." Maya nudged Chloe with her shoulder. "He's not wrong. Your mom's always on the phone. Tell me about it," Chloe muttered, rolling her eyes, and then she looked up at Marcus, not at Evelyn. Not at the doorway where her mother stood unnoticed, but at Marcus. Like he was the center of something steady and safe. Like he was home. "When did that happen?" Evelyn wondered, the words repeating in her skull like a heartbeat. "When did I move from the center to somewhere outside the frame?" Her phone vibrated in her hand. A board member's name flashed across the screen, demanding attention, demanding decisions. She stared past the glowing display, her eyes fixed on the 3 figures on the bench, on the sketchbook spread open across their laps, on the faint sound of Chloe's laughter drifting through the garden. To understand how they ended up in this garden together, how Evelyn Carter found herself standing on the wrong side of the glass, watching her own daughter reach for someone else's hand. We have to go back a few weeks. Back to the night Chloe collapsed outside her mother's office. Riverside Hope Medical Center never really slept. It just changed masks. In the day, it wore the mask of efficiency, white coats flashing by, polished shoes on disinfected floors, clipboards, tablets, coffee cups. At night, the mask slipped. The lights felt harsher, the hallways longer, the silence between beeping monitors heavier. Marcus Reed moved through that half-sleeping world with a mop in his hands and an ache in his lower back that never quite went away. The janitor's cart rattled softly ahead of him as he pushed it down the 3rd-floor corridor, past closed patient doors and the muted hum of machines. Boston Red Sox cap pulled low, earphones hanging but not playing. He worked like he always did, quiet, precise, invisible. He checked his watch. Nearly 9. Maya should have been finishing her homework by now. He pictured her small body curled over the rickety kitchen table in their narrow apartment, pencil tapping against the page, tongue sticking out a little when she concentrated too hard. They'd left the TV off tonight. "Too distracting," she'd declared, trying to look older than her 11 years. "You're working too much, Daddy," she'd told him last week. Her voice had been soft, almost accusing. "I don't like it when it's just me in the dark." He'd laughed it off then, made some stupid joke about leaving a light on to keep the dark company. But it lingered. It always lingered. He wrung the mop out in the yellow bucket, lifted it again, and that's when he noticed her. A girl. Sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor across from the glass door of the CEO's office, backpack slung beside her, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands, blonde ponytail slightly frayed, like it had been neat once and then had to survive several hours of boredom and frustrated fingers. She was tracing circles on the tile with the tip of her sneaker. Marcus paused mid-step. Kids around here weren't unusual. This was a hospital, after all. But this kid wasn't in scrubs, wasn't hooked up to anything, wasn't flanked by tired parents. She was just waiting. He glanced at the frosted glass door. Evelyn Carter, CEO, was etched in silver letters, backlit by the office light. A shadow moved behind the glass, someone pacing. "How long you been here, kid?" he wondered. He lowered the mop and walked closer. Chloe looked up at him briefly, then down again. Her eyes were rimmed with pink, like she'd been working hard not to cry more than she already had. "You okay?" Marcus asked. She shrugged one shoulder. "Yeah. Your mom in there?" He nodded toward the door. "Yeah. Well, do I? She know you're out here?" Another shrug. "She said it'd be 5 minutes." Marcus glanced at the clock on the wall above them. 9:04 p.m. He didn't know when those 5 minutes had started. But judging by the empty candy wrapper beside her and the crumpled paper cup that once held vending machine hot chocolate, it hadn't been recently. He wasn't supposed to get involved. He cleaned floors. He took out trash. He didn't comment on board meetings or little girls with tired eyes. But he'd seen that look before. On Maya. On himself. In old bathroom mirrors. He cleared his throat. "You hungry?" She looked at him warily. "My mom doesn't like me having junk food." He thought about the sandwich he'd wrapped in foil and left in his locker, the extra granola bar he'd shoved in his pocket out of habit. "Good news," he said quietly, reaching into his pocket. "This is technically health food." He held out the granola bar. It wasn't much off-brand, maybe a little squished, but her eyes latched onto it anyway. She hesitated. I don't have any cash." "Didn't ask you for cash." The hallway was still. The overhead lights hummed. A nurse wheeled a cart out of a room down the corridor, shot them a curious glance, and disappeared into an elevator. Somewhere, a monitor beeped. Finally, the girl reached out and took the bar, the sleeve of her hoodie falling back enough for him to see the faint ink of pen marks on her skin doodles. Maybe. Lines. Shapes. "Thanks," she mumbled. He nodded and shifted his grip on the mop. "What's your name?" "Chloe." He smiled a little. "Nice to meet you, Chloe. I'm Marcus." She studied his face for a moment, like she was trying to decide if he was safe, then unwrapped the granola bar with careful fingers. He started to move away, to give her the space back, but her voice stopped him. "Do you work here every night?" "Most nights," he said. "Some weekends. Must be boring." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Sometimes, but boring is better than chaotic, far as hospitals go." She bit into the granola bar, nodded like she agreed but didn't fully understand. "Your mom know it's this late?" he asked again. "She's busy." The words came out flat, practiced. "She has to run the hospital." Ah. Pieces began to click together. CEO's name on the door, kid waiting outside, busy mom. He'd seen Evelyn Carter stride past his mop bucket before, heels hitting the tile like punctuation, her eyes always somewhere else. "I'm fine," Chloe added, as if suddenly aware she might be inviting pity. "I'm used to it." Being used to something didn't make it right. Marcus swallowed those words, pushed the cart forward, and went back to his cleaning. 2 floors below, while Chloe ate a granola bar on a cold hallway floor, Maya sat cross-legged on the worn couch in their apartment, sketchbook balanced on her knees. The TV was dark. A single lamp glowed beside her, throwing light across the page. She had drawn the kitchen table 3 times already and erased it 3 times. It never looked quite right. Too empty without the coffee cup her mother used to leave there. Too wide without her mother's hands. She flipped to a new page and tried something else. A garden. Not the scraggly patch of grass between their building and the next, where cigarette butts hid under bushes. A different garden. A high garden. One with benches and trees and hanging lights. A place you had to climb up to, away from noise and fear and bills. She shaded in a path leading to a bench, her pencil moving slowly. In the corner of the page, she sketched a small figure on the bench, then another, one taller, one shorter. A third, off to the side, half-formed. "Daddy's busy," she whispered to the paper. But maybe here, he could rest. Her phone buzzed beside her. She snatched it up, hope flickering in her chest, and then eased a little when she saw the text. From Dad. "On my break." "You okay, baby girl?" Her thumbs flew. "I'm okay. Drawing. Did you eat?" She could almost hear his chuckle when the dots appeared. "Yes, ma'am. You doing your homework?" "Done already. Overachiever. I'll be home by midnight." She stared at the last message, bottom lip caught between her teeth. Midnight. That was 4 hours. She looked over at the door, at the lock, at the shadows gathering around the edges of the room. She typed and erased 3 times before sending, "I miss Mom." His reply came slower this time. "Me too. Every day." She stared at the words until they blurred, then turned back to her garden. She added one more bench, one more tiny figure. Over the next week, Marcus saw Chloe outside that office more than once. She became another fixture in the hospital's nighttime landscape, like the flickering exit sign at the end of the hall or the coffee stain on the ceiling by the staff lounge. Sometimes she sat on the floor, sometimes on one of the plastic chairs against the wall, feet swinging, always alone. He'd pass by, pushing his cart, and she'd glance up. Sometimes she'd give him a small nod. Sometimes she'd look away quickly, embarrassed. Once, she lifted her hand in a quick wave, the granola bar wrapper crinkling in her other fist. One night, he noticed something different. She had her own sketchbook. He almost missed it. The black spiral-bound notebook resting on her lap, her fingers smudged with pencil. He caught a glimpse of what she was drawing: a tree, its branches reaching up, a bench beneath it. He slowed. "You draw?" he asked. Chloe didn't look up at first. "Yeah, Iscrime. Trees, huh?" She shrugged, but there was a hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. "Sometimes. Places. Things that feel quiet." He leaned on the mop handle. "Quiet's good." She flicked her eyes up at him, then back down. "What about you? Do I draw?" He laughed, shaking his head. "Nah, can barely draw a straight line." "You don't have to draw straight lines to be good," she said softly. "Sometimes the crooked ones are better." That startled him. Not the words themselves, but the way she said them matter of fact, like she'd been thinking about it for a long time. He reached slowly into his backpack, feeling for the worn edges of a different sketchbook. It was old, corners bent, cover faded. Maya's. She'd begged him to take it once, said she didn't like the idea of it sitting in her empty bedroom while he worked. "It'll keep you company," she'd said. He debated for a second. Then he pulled it out. "My girl draws," he said. "She's about your age." Chloe's eyes widened. "You have a daughter?" "Yeah, Maya." He flipped the sketchbook open carefully, stopping at a page he knew by heart, a small hospital bed, drawn in careful, tentative lines, and next to it, a woman with kind eyes and a scarf over her head, holding a little girl's hand. "My wife," he said, voice quieter now. "Maya drew this when her mom was sick." Chloe leaned forward, drawn almost against her will. Her fingers hovered over the page but didn't touch. "She's good," Chloe whispered. "Yeah," he said. "She is your wife." Chloe didn't finish the sentence. "Gone," Marcus said simply. "Couple years now." Chloe swallowed. Her own pencil scratched softly against her page. A tree trunk, darker now. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." Instead, she whispered, "My dad's gone too. Just in a different way." He didn't press. He didn't need to. The weight in her voice said enough. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence, janitor and CEO's daughter, adult and child, grief and grief guarded by fluorescent lights and the hum of the heating system. Then the office door behind her opened. "Chloe, sweetheart, I'm so—" Evelyn's voice cut off mid-apology when she saw Marcus standing there with his mop and his daughter's sketchbook in his hand. Chloe flinched, like she'd been caught doing something wrong. "Mom, this is Marcus," she blurted. "He works here, and his daughter draws. Look." Evelyn's eyes flicked to the sketchbook, to Marcus's face, to the wet floor sign he'd put down a few feet away. She plastered on that practiced boardroom smile. "Thank you for keeping her company," she said briskly, already checking her watch. "Chloe, we have to go. It's late." Chloe's shoulders slumped. "We said 5 minutes," she muttered. "I know, honey. I got stuck in a meeting. Come on." Marcus stepped back, tucking Maya's sketchbook into his backpack. "Night, Chloe," he said. "Good night," she replied, her voice dropping as she followed her mother into the office, the door closing behind them like a barrier. Evelyn didn't look back. Days passed. The pattern held. Meetings, hallways, sketchbooks, waiting, and then everything broke. It started like any other overbooked evening. Evelyn's calendar was a war zone board call with investors at 6, emergency meeting about budget cuts at 7, a crisis with a pharmaceutical partner at 8. They'd moved the budget meeting twice already. Pushing it again would make her look indecisive, weak. She could hear her father's voice in the back of her mind. You don't get to be soft if you want to survive. She'd promised Chloe she'd be done by 8:30. Just one more meeting, sweetheart, she'd said that morning, smoothing her daughter's hair. We'll get ice cream after. Deal? Chloe had nodded slowly. You always say just one more meeting. I mean it this time, Evelyn insisted. I put it in my schedule and everything. By 8:15, she was knee-deep in a heated argument about staffing levels. By 8:30, her phone buzzed with a reminder. Ice cream with Chloe. She silenced it and pushed forward. By 9, she had forgotten the reminder existed. Outside her door, the hallway stretched long and empty. Chloe sat alone on the plastic chair, hands clenched around the straps of her backpack. The hospital felt different tonight, louder, or maybe it was just her heartbeat. She could hear voices through the door, her mother's, other people's. Words like liability and sustainability and restructuring bled through the glass, none of them meaning anything to a 12-year-old waiting for her mom to remember she was there. The walls seemed closer than usual, the lights brighter, her chest tighter. She tried to distract herself. She pulled out her sketchbook, opened to a blank page. The pencil felt heavy in her hand. She drew a line, then another. They wobbled. Her vision blurred for a second. She blinked, refocused. Breathe, she told herself. Just breathe. But her breaths came shorter and sharper. The air tasted wrong, too thin, too thick, too something. She stood up suddenly, chair scraping against tile. The sound echoed down the hallway. No one came. The edges of her vision fuzzed. Her backpack felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She took one step toward the nurse's station. Another. The floor tipped. Her hand shot out for balance and caught nothing but air. She saw the hallway tilt sideways, heard the distant clatter of her pencil hitting the floor, felt a wave of hot and cold crash over her, and then her knees buckled. Her body swayed once. Then she fell. Marcus heard the sound before he saw the body. He was 2 corridors away, throwing a bag of trash into the big gray bin, when the sharp thud of something hitting tile bounced down the hall. At first he thought it was a dropped tray. Then he heard a nurse's startled gasp. He left the cart where it was and ran. His boots pounded over the floor. He rounded the corner and saw her small, crumpled, blonde ponytail splayed across the tile like a halo knocked off center. Chloe! It's her. The name tore out of him before he could think about whether he had the right to say it like that, with that much fear. 2 nurses were already rushing from the station. One had a blood pressure cuff dangling from her neck, the other a stethoscope. They hesitated for a split second, not wanting to slip on the still damp patch of floor from earlier. Marcus didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees beside Chloe, his heart slamming against his ribs. Her face was pale, breaths shallow, chest rising and falling too fast and too erratically. Her fingers twitched once. Hey, he murmured, reaching out with shaking hands. Chloe, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Panic clawed at his throat. He shoved it down. He slid one arm under her shoulders, another under her knees, and lifted her. She was lighter than Maya, he registered distantly. Too light. Get the ER ready, one of the nurses barked to the other. Now. Marcus didn't wait for instructions. He had walked these halls 1,000 times, knew every turn, every shortcut. He cradled Chloe against his chest and started running. The fluorescent lights streaked past overhead. Monitors beeped. Doors opened. Voices rose. Excuse me, coming through. He heard the call ahead of him. Nurses clearing a path. Is he the CEO's kid? None of it mattered. All that mattered was the small weight in his arms and the way her head lolled against his shoulder. "Stay with me, kid," he whispered, breath burning. "You hear me? Don't you go anywhere." They burst through the doors to the emergency department. Air cooler, smells sharper, antiseptic, metal, fear. A bed was already being rolled toward them. "Put her down here," a doctor ordered. Marcus laid Chloe on the bed, his fingers reluctant to let go. Doctors and nurses swarmed around her, moving with practiced urgency. "What happened?" someone demanded. She was waiting outside the CEO's office, and she just collapsed," Marcus said, voice rough. "She couldn't breathe right." "History of asthma? Panic attacks?" another voice asked. Marcus lifted his hands, stepping back. I don't know." For the first time since he'd scooped her off the floor, doubt crashed over him. He wasn't family. He wasn't supposed to be here, not this far in. But his feet wouldn't move. "Someone get Miss Carter," the doctor barked. Now, Evelyn was mid-sentence when the knock came. "I understand the shareholders' concerns, Jeremy. But we can't keep cutting staff and expecting—" The door flew open. "Miss Carter," a nurse gasped, cheeks flushed. "You need to come to the ER. It's Chloe." Everything stopped. The conference speaker might as well have been thrown out the window for how quickly Evelyn forgot it existed. "What happened?" she demanded, already on her feet. "She collapsed outside your office. They think it might have been a panic attack," or the rest of the sentence dissolved as Evelyn pushed past her, heels hitting the floor in sharp staccato beats. She didn't feel the stares from board members as she yanked the door open. She didn't hear whoever was still droning from the speaker. All she could hear was the blood rushing in her ears and one word repeating over and over. "Chloe, Chloe, Chloe." She took the elevator because it was faster. Jabbing the button like sheer force could make it move quicker. The ride felt eternal. When the doors finally slid open onto the ER, she stepped into chaos. And there, near the entrance, she saw him, Marcus, standing just off to the side, hands still hovering in midair like he wasn't sure what to do with them, eyes locked on the bed where her daughter lay. For a split second, just one, Evelyn saw the scene wrong. She saw a man in a blue maintenance uniform, too close to her unconscious child, saw brown hands lifting pale skin, saw something she couldn't name but felt in her gut. Then she saw Chloe's face, pale, damp at the temples, eyes half open, struggling. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. "Chloe!" Her voice cracked in a way it never did in meetings, in negotiations, in anything that mattered less than this. She pushed past Marcus without looking at him, without realizing she did it. A nurse stepped aside to let her through. Evelyn grabbed her daughter's hand. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Chloe's eyes flickered. "Mom, I'm here," she said again, as much for herself as for her child. The doctor glanced up. "Miss Carter, good. Her vitals are stabilizing. Looks like a panic attack combined with exhaustion and low blood sugar." How bad is it?" she asked. "She's going to be okay," he said. "But we should talk about stress, rest, maybe seeing a psychologist. This didn't come out of nowhere." Evelyn exhaled slowly, some of the tightness in her chest loosening. She brushed damp hair from Chloe's forehead, guilt already snaking its way up her spine. She didn't look at Marcus. Not yet. She couldn't. Not until later, when Chloe had been moved to a quiet observation room and was finally asleep, hooked up to a monitor more for reassurance than necessity. Only then did Evelyn step out into the hallway and see him still there, leaning against the wall like he was trying to disappear into it. "Mr.," she faltered, realizing she wasn't sure she remembered his name. "Reed," he supplied quietly. "Marcus Reed. Mr. Reed." She straightened automatically, slipping into her CEO posture like armor. "I'm told you," found Chloe. "Yes, ma'am." "And you carried her to the ER?" His gaze flicked past her to the doorway where Chloe slept, then back. Couldn't exactly leave her on the floor. A muscle jumped in her jaw. No, of course not. Silence stretched between them. In the distance, a monitor beeped. A phone rang. Someone called for respiratory support. "Thank you," she said finally. The words tasted unfamiliar, edged with formality. "For what you did tonight." "One," he shrugged, clearly uncomfortable under her scrutiny. Any father would have done the same. Something in that sentence hit her strangely. Any father, like some quiet indictment. "Still," she said, "you went above your—" He almost laughed, a short, humorless sound. "With respect, Miss Carter, your daughter was on the floor and couldn't breathe." That felt pretty squarely in the human being category. Her eyebrows lifted a fraction. She wasn't used to being corrected, especially not by someone in a blue maintenance jacket. But instead of bristling, she just felt tired. "And you've spoken to her before?" she asked, shifting tactics. "Chloe?" "A few times," he said. "In the hall. She waits out here a lot." The words landed with a dull thud. "She does?" Evelyn asked. He studied her for a moment, then looked away. "I'm just the janitor, ma'am. Not my place to tell you how often your kid's waiting outside your office." Heat crept up her neck. Shame. Anger. Not at him. At herself. At everything that had led to this hallway, this conversation. "But since you asked," he added softly, "yeah, I see her out here, more than I'd like to." He pushed off the wall. "I should get back to work." As he walked away, Evelyn looked back through the door at her sleeping daughter. "More than I'd like to." The phrase stuck with her long after she left the hospital that night. Chloe was quieter the next few days. The doctors said she was fine physically. Panic attack, dehydration, maybe not enough food in her system. They gave Evelyn pamphlets about anxiety in children, recommended a therapist. Evelyn took them all, filed them in her briefcase, and tried to quiet the buzzing in her head long enough to focus in meetings. But at home, at the small dining table that had once seemed like a proud symbol of success and now only felt like another surface layered with documents, Chloe picked at her dinner. "How are you feeling?" Evelyn asked, cutting into a piece of chicken she had no appetite for but was forcing down anyway. "Fine. You sure? We can talk about what happened." Chloe shrugged, pushing broccoli around her plate. "You were busy. I sat outside. I got dizzy. That's all." There was no malice in her tone. That made it worse. "I should have come out sooner," Evelyn said. "I know that." Chloe didn't answer. "You know you can always interrupt me if you need something," Evelyn pressed. "You don't have to wait." Chloe looked up then, eyes suddenly sharp. "I did interrupt you once." Evelyn blinked. "When?" "In January. You were on the phone. I said I didn't want to be at the hospital all the time." Chloe's voice didn't rise. It was too tired to rise. "You told me to be quiet because you were handling something important." The words hit Evelyn like a slap she'd forgotten she'd thrown. She fumbled for language she could use in a boardroom. Something professional, reasonable. "That call was important," Chloe finished for her. "I know." She shoved a piece of chicken in her mouth to signal she was done talking. Evelyn stared at her daughter for a long moment. She thought of Marcus in the hallway, his calm, his certainty, the way he'd said any father. She thought of Chloe's pale face in the ER bed. "You won't lose her because you work less. You'll lose her because you come home too late." The sentence hadn't been spoken yet, but it was already forming in the air between them. Back at Riverside Hope, Marcus scrubbed a coffee stain off the floor near the staff lounge, trying not to think about the number on his paycheck. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. Rent, groceries, Maya's school supplies, the shoes she'd outgrown last month, the electric bill. He was constantly playing a game of musical chairs where the music was money, and there were always more bills than places to sit. "Daddy?" He looked up. Maya stood in the doorway, school backpack slung over one shoulder, arms full of paper. He checked the clock. "You're early." "Mrs. Hernandez dropped me off," she said, referring to their neighbor. "Said she had to go to her sister's." He wiped his hands on his pants. You shouldn't be back here. Everyone lets me, she said cheerfully. They like me more than you, he snorted. Rude. She giggled and crossed the room, setting the stack of paper on a clean counter. Look what I drew. He flipped through them. Hospital hallways, people on benches, trees, always trees. You still drawing that garden? He asked. Maya's face brightened. Yeah. I added lights this time. See? She pointed at small circles strung above the benches. And I put you here. She touched the tiny figure seated under a tree, and me here. And someone else here. Someone else? He asked lightly. She shrugged. I don't know yet. Before he could respond, a familiar voice floated in from the hall. Marcus? Chloe. She peered around the doorway, eyes lighting up when she saw Maya. You brought your daughter, she said, stepping in. Hi, I'm Chloe. Maya straightened, suddenly shy. Hi, I'm Maya. You draw too, Chloe said, nodding toward the papers. Yeah. Can I see? They moved together almost naturally, heads bending over the drawings. Marcus watched them, something like relief unfurling in his chest. Chloe's color had returned. The dark circles under her eyes had faded a little. She drew a garden on the roof, Chloe said, wonder creeping into her voice. That's what I've been drawing too. You have? Maya's eyes widened. Chloe nodded. My mom wants to build something like this for the hospital. A healing garden. Maya looked impressed. Your mom's like, the boss here, right? Yeah. Chloe's mouth twisted. She's good at being the boss. What about being a mom? Maya asked bluntly. Kids didn't know how to sand their questions down. Chloe hesitated. She's busy. Maya chewed her lip. My mom died, she said softly. So my dad's busy too. But he still tries to be both. Marcus felt the words hit him. Hard. He opened his mouth to correct her, to say he was trying but not always succeeding, then shut it again. She was trying to make their lives make sense. Chloe's hand drifted toward one of the pages. So in your garden? She asked. No one's busy? Not like that, Maya said. They can rest there. That's the rule. Chloe smiled faintly. I like that rule. Marcus watched them for a long time. Two little girls building a world on paper where adults kept their promises. When Evelyn next noticed her daughter smiling, really smiling, it wasn't at home. It was in a staff break room, through a small rectangular window in the door. She had been walking by, reviewing an email about fundraising targets, when a ripple of laughter slipped through the closed door. It sounded like Chloe. She paused instinctively. She looked in. There, at one of the worn tables, sat Chloe, Maya, and Marcus. Chloe and Maya were huddled over a sketchbook, both talking at once, hands flailing as they argued about where to put a bench in the drawing. Marcus sat beside them, one elbow on the table, chin resting on his hand, eyes crinkled with that quiet half-laugh Evelyn had only ever seen on strangers. Chloe was glowing. Not the polite, reserved smile Evelyn saw at school events. Not the slightly brittle smile she gave when adults complimented her good grades. This was something else. Unlocked. Unburdened. Evelyn stood frozen, fingers whitening around her phone. She didn't move until a nurse nearly walked into her. Miss Carter? The nurse apologized. Sorry, I didn't see you there. It's fine, Evelyn said automatically, stepping aside. She glanced through the window one more time. Chloe threw her head back and laughed at something Maya had said, hand reaching out to tap Marcus's arm, like he was part of the joke. Evelyn swallowed. When did my daughter start looking at him the way she used to look at me? The question began to form. Not yet words, but a feeling like a bruise. She asked to speak with him later that day. They met in a small conference room that usually hosted vendor presentations and training sessions. The table was too big for just two people. The walls were too white. The fluorescent lights were too bright. Marcus sat at the far end, his blue jacket zipped, hands folded on the table like he was afraid to touch anything. Mr. Reed, Evelyn began. taking the seat across from him. "I wanted to thank you again. For what you did when Chloe collapsed. And for the time you've spent with her since." He shifted in his chair. "Like I said before, ma'am, any father would have done the same," she finished for him. "I remember." Silence. The hum of the AC filled it. "She's different lately," Evelyn admitted. Saying it out loud made it feel risky. "More open, more herself. I know you and your daughter have something to do with that." He let out a slow breath. "She and Maya get along," he said. "They've got some of the same stuff." "Stuff," Evelyn repeated, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Lonely," he said plainly. "They both know what it feels like. Maya lost her mom, Chloe." He hesitated, unsure how far he could go. "Chloe's losing you too. Just in a different way." The words echoed what Chloe had told him in the hallway that first time. "My dad's gone too, just in a different way." Evelyn flinched. I'm not saying you're a bad mother," Marcus interjected quickly. "I don't know your life, but I know what I see. A girl sitting outside an office. A lot." She looked down at her hands. She'd spent years making sure her nails were always perfect, manicured, ready to shake hands with donors, board members, politicians. Right now they just looked small. "I worked my whole life to get here," she said quietly, "to give her everything. And somehow everything doesn't include you," he said gently. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was no CEO armor, just a woman on the verge of losing something she didn't know how to keep. "How do you do it?" she asked. "You work nights. You have less time than I do. Less help. And yet Chloe feels like you're there. Maya feels like you're there. How?" He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You say that like I'm some kind of expert. I'm not. But I know this," he said, leaning forward. "When my wife got sick, I was working 2 jobs. I missed her last good days because I was trying to pay for meds and bills and rent. And then one day, there weren't any days left to buy." He swallowed, eyes going distant for a moment. "I promised myself I wasn't gonna make that mistake with Maya. Money matters." "Yeah. But time?" He shook his head. "Time doesn't come back. Not ever." The room was quiet, except for the hum of the vents. "You won't lose her because you work less," he said finally, voice low but steady. "You'll lose her because you come home too late." The sentence landed in Evelyn's chest, like a stone in a still pool. Ripples went out in all directions, disturbing things that had been settled for years. She thought of her own childhood, sitting on cracked kitchen tiles, listening to her father bang on about how lazy people end up poor and invisible, watching her mother count crumpled bills on the table, lines etched deep around her mouth. At 15, she'd vowed never to be powerless, never to have to ask someone else for rent money, never to be a woman whose life could be uprooted by a man walking away. She'd built her career like a fortress, brick by brick, meeting by meeting. She'd given herself to the hospital, to the role, to the idea that if she could just reach some undefined pinnacle, it would all be worth it. Now her own daughter was sitting outside her office door, eating granola bars from a janitor. The irony tasted bitter. "I don't know how to fix this," she admitted. The words scared her. She wasn't supposed to say she didn't know. "I don't know how to be her mother without losing everything I've built." Marcus studied her. "Maybe," he said slowly. "The trick is realizing that what you build at home counts, too." She looked at him, really looked at him, not as a uniform, not as a name in a payroll file, as a man who had lost and stayed, who scrubbed floors at night and still somehow managed to be a North Star for his child. She didn't have an answer. But the next morning, when she opened her laptop and looked at her schedule, she did something she almost never did. She deleted a meeting. The idea for the garden came from a drawing. Technically, the Healing Garden project had been in the works for months, an initiative dreamed up in a boardroom, designed by an architectural firm, attached to grants and PR campaigns and donor galas. Evelyn had seen glossy mock-ups with sleek benches and polished stone, greenery selected more for aesthetics than anything else. But it was Chloe and Maya who brought it to life. They'd been curled up in a corner of the cafeteria, sketchbook open between them, as Evelyn waited in line for coffee. She could hear snippets of their conversation over the low rumble of voices. "No, put the trees closer," Chloe insisted. "So it feels like you're inside a hug." "Aver. But then no one can see the sky," Maya argued. "It needs to feel open, not trapped." "What if we put the benches in a circle?" Chloe suggested. "So no one has their back to anyone." Maya's eyes lit up. "Like no one's left out." "Exactly." Evelyn found herself abandoning the coffee line and veering toward them. "Can I see?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Chloe stiffened, surprised. It's just a drawing. For fun." "I'd still like to see," Evelyn said. They hesitated, then turned the sketchbook toward her. It was rough, lines overlapping, eraser marks smudged. But there was something undeniably human in it. Benches arranged in gentle circles, trees placed not for symmetry but for shade, a little corner with a small swing, a winding path that didn't go straight but meandered, giving people time to think, to breathe. "This is—" Evelyn trailed off, searching for the right word. Her vocabulary was full of terms like efficient, scalable, innovative. This was none of those things. "It's kind," she said finally. "It's a kind garden." Chloe blinked. "We just drew what we'd want if we were stuck in a hospital," she said. "Somewhere to go that doesn't smell like bleach." Maya nodded. "And somewhere our dads could sit where they're not working," she added, then flushed. "Or moms," she added hastily. Something unclenched in Evelyn's chest. "Can I borrow this?" she asked, touching the edge of the page. "Just to show someone?" Chloe's eyes widened. "You mean like actually use it?" "We've been planning a garden already," Evelyn said, "but I think maybe we've been doing it wrong." She met their eyes, one after the other. "I'd like to plan it with you instead." The next board presentation went differently than usual. Instead of sleek renderings, Evelyn clicked to a slide that showed a scanned sketch, pencil lines, eraser smudges, the faint outline of two pairs of small hands in the corner, like ghosts. "This," she said, "is the plan I'd like to move forward with for the healing garden." There were murmurs around the table. "Who drew that?" one of the board members asked, skeptical. "My daughter," Evelyn said. "And Mr. Reed's daughter." "Mr. Reed?" Another frowned. "The janitorial staff?" "Facility services," Evelyn corrected automatically. "Yes." A few eyebrows climbed. "With all due respect, Miss Carter," an older man at the far end began, "we hired an award-winning architectural firm. Who gave us beautiful, expensive designs that look like hotel lobbies?" Evelyn cut in, sharper than usual. "We are a hospital. Our patients, our families, our staff, they don't need a photo op. They need somewhere real to breathe, to rest, to feel human again." She clicked through photos she'd taken of the girl's sketch. This garden was designed by people who actually live in our hallways, who know what it feels like to wait outside an office door or a surgery room. I think that matters. Silence. Then, slowly, one of the women on the board spoke up. "I like it," she said. "It feels honest." "I agree," another added reluctantly. "We can have the firm refine it, of course. But the concept," he nodded. "The concept is strong." Evelyn exhaled. She didn't say that it was the first time in a long time she'd walked into a meeting feeling like she was doing something for her daughter instead of just for her title. She didn't say that Chloe's eyes had shone when she asked, "You're really going to use our idea?" She just clicked to the budget slide and kept going. The promotion came later. It wasn't something Marcus asked for, or expected. But as the Healing Garden project moved from drawings to blueprints to construction schedules, his name popped up again and again. "He knows every inch of this building," one of the administrators said in passing. "Systems, pipes, Maintenance schedules. If we don't involve him, we're idiots. Evelyn listened. A week later, she called him into her office. He stood awkwardly on the expensive rug, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The two framed degrees on the wall, hers seemed almost to stare down at him. "Relax, Mr. Reed," she said. "You're not in trouble." "That's good," he said, only half joking. "Kinda feels like the principal's office." She smiled. It surprised her that it was genuine. "I wanted to talk to you about a new role," she said. "Facility coordinator. You'd be overseeing the maintenance schedules, coordinating teams, working more closely with administration, and with the contractors for the garden. We have gone." He blinked. "Twice. I'm a janitor, Miss Carter." "You've been a janitor," she corrected. "You've also been the person people call when the heating fails, when a pipe bursts, when a machine's making a weird noise no one can identify. You're the one who knows which wing floods when it rains and how to stop it. That's more than just mopping floors." He shifted his weight. "I don't have no fancy degree. You have experience," she said, "and the respect of half the hospital, from what I've seen." He looked at the floor, at the rug, at the framed photo on her desk of a much younger Chloe with ice cream smeared on her face. "What's the catch?" he asked. "Better pay," she said. "More reasonable hours. Some days, some evenings, fewer overnights. You'd still be busy, but you'd be able to go home earlier." His throat worked as he swallowed. "And Maya?" he asked quietly. "You'd see her more," she said simply. He closed his eyes for a moment, hand flexing at his side. "My wife wanted to go back to school," he said, voice coming out unsteady. "Take a class or two. Then she got sick. Everything went on hold. I always figured." He trailed off, shrugging. "Figured this was it for me. Floors and trash and late nights." "It doesn't have to be," Evelyn said. He opened his eyes and met her gaze. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. There was no accusation in it, just honest confusion. She thought of Chloe's laughter in the garden, of Maya's drawings, of the night in the ER when Marcus had carried her child through those doors. She thought of all the ways she'd been blind and all the chances she'd nearly missed. "Because you showed up for my daughter when I didn't," she said softly. "And because you're good at what you do. Both of those deserve something." He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh and almost like a sob. "I'll need to think about it," he said. "Of course," she replied. He didn't take long. The day the healing garden opened, the hospital felt different. Not quieter, not exactly. The beeps, the pages, the footsteps all still there. But there was another layer now. The smell of damp soil, the rustle of leaves, the soft sound of wind chimes someone had insisted on adding at the last minute. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small. Just a handful of staff, a couple of board members, a few patients well enough to be out of bed, and 4 people who mattered more than any of them. Marcus stood beside Evelyn, a clean button-down shirt under his new name badge. Marcus Reed, Facility Coordinator. It felt strange on his chest. Heavy. Good. Maya and Chloe stood in front of them, each holding one end of a pair of scissors oversized and ridiculous enough to make them giggle. "You ready?" Marcus whispered to Maya. She nodded so hard her braids bounced. "Ready." Chloe looked up at her mother. "You sure we can do it together?" she whispered. Evelyn smiled, heart squeezing. "I'm sure. This is your garden." She placed her hand gently on Chloe's shoulder, feeling the warmth through the thin fabric of her dress. The garden itself looked both exactly and nothing like the girl's drawing. The benches were in soft circles, wood warm under the touch. The trees were young but already tall enough to cast dappled shade, planted close enough to feel like an embrace but not so close that the sky disappeared. A small swing hung from a sturdy frame in the corner. Lights were strung overhead, unlit in the afternoon but promising something gentle for the evenings. The path wound, not straight, giving just enough time between each turn to let a thought rise and fall. 3, called the volunteer with the camera. 2, 1, videos, and come back. Maya and Chloe cut the ribbon together. The thin blue fabric fluttered to the ground. Everyone clapped. It was a small sound in the grand scheme of things, no media, no speech, no plaque unveiling. But for the four of them, it was loud. It was enough. Later, after the last polite handshake had been exchanged and the last board member had wandered off, they remained. Chloe and Maya moved through the garden like they'd been born in it. They tested benches, swung on the swing, declared this spot perfect for drawing and that spot perfect for talking about serious things. Their sketchbooks were already out, pencils scratching, capturing the real version of what they'd once only imagined. Marcus and Evelyn sat on a bench near the center, not quite touching, watching their daughters. "It's beautiful," Marcus said. "It's theirs," Evelyn replied. "Ours." "A little." He looked at her. "You sound proud, Atent." She smiled, a little surprised at herself. "I am." "Of the garden?" he asked softly. "Of them," she said. "Of us." She swallowed. "Of me, for once." He chuckled. "You should be." A breeze stirred the leaves. One of the wind chimes tinkled, a faint, delicate sound. "You were right," she said after a moment. "About what?" "Time." Her eyes stayed on Chloe, who was now dragging Maya toward a corner where the sunlight fell just right. "I've been rearranging things, delegating, turning off my phone after a certain hour. It feels like I'm dropping balls everywhere. But, he prompted. "But last night I got home before dark," she said. "We ate dinner at the table. We drew stupid pictures of each other's faces. And Chloe fell asleep on the couch with her head in my lap. I don't think I've been that happy in years." Marcus's face softened. "This place," she continued, gesturing around them. "I thought I was building it for the hospital, for the image, for the patients. But I think I needed it too." He nodded slowly. "Me too." They sat in silence for a while, watching the girls. As the sun dipped lower, the lights on the wires above them flickered on one by one. The garden shifted from daytime to evening, from public space to something more intimate. Maya dropped onto the bench beside Marcus, slightly out of breath. "Daddy, look," she said, thrusting her sketchbook at him. He took it carefully. On the page was the garden, drawn yet again. Only this time, the tiny figures on the bench were clearer. 4 of them, 2 adults in the middle, 2 kids on either side. "It's us," Maya said proudly. He swallowed past the lump in his throat. "Yeah, baby, it is." Chloe drifted over, perching on the other side of Evelyn. "Mom, can we come up here? Like, a lot?" she asked, almost shy. "Yeah," Evelyn said. "We can." "Even when you're busy?" Chloe pushed. "Especially when I'm busy," Evelyn replied. She turned and brushed a stray hair from her daughter's face. "I'm learning that some things are worth letting emails wait for." Chloe studied her for a moment, like she was trying to see if the words were real. Then she leaned sideways, resting her head against Evelyn's arm. "Okay," she murmured. Maya yawned, leaning into Marcus. The weight of her against his side was familiar and new all at once, heavy with trust. For the first time in a long time, the evening didn't feel like a race against exhaustion. It felt like a slow exhale. Marcus glanced at Evelyn. She looked different in this light, softer, less sharp around the edges. "Think we're doing okay?" he asked her quietly. She tilted her head, considering. Her eyes moved from Maya to Chloe to the sketchbook still open on his lap, then out across the garden they'd all built together. "I think," she said, "for people who've spent most of their lives running, we're finally learning how to stay." He nodded. They didn't call what was growing between them anything. Not yet. It was in the small things. The way Evelyn would swing by the maintenance office just to ask about his day. The way Marcus would bring an extra coffee to her during late meetings, silently setting it down by her elbow. The way their eyes would meet when one of the girls laughed, and they'd share a look that said, "We did that." Somehow. Maybe one day they'd find words for it. For now, it was enough to sit side by side on a wooden bench in a garden that hadn't existed a few months ago, surrounded by trees and lights and the sound of their daughters' voices. The hospital hummed below them, machines and pagers and urgent footsteps, life and death passing through its doors as it always had, as it always would. Up here, there was something else. A place between loss and rebuilding, between broken promises and new ones, between two families and one. Maya's eyelids drooped. Chloe's pencil slowed on the page. Marcus shifted, letting his shoulder brush Evelyn's just slightly. She didn't pull away. Maybe, he thought, as the sky over Chicago deepened into purple and the first stars began to prick through. We're all just finding our way back home. Word Tilby. And for the first time in a very long time, home didn't feel like a place he'd already lost. It felt like something still unfolding. One quiet evening, one shared sketch, one small choice at a time. If this story touched something in you, a memory of waiting for someone, or of working too hard to show love, feel free to leave a little note for Chloe, for Maya, for Marcus or Evelyn in your own heart, or on a page somewhere. Sometimes, the smallest words become the start of a new kind of garden.